go button. We'll make sure it's live before we get started. There's a little bit of latency between the go button and when YouTube says we're actually live, so I just want to give it a second. Okay,
Yeah.
we are live. Fantastic on YouTube. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to go live on TikTok because Dave is going to join us on TikTok. Although you won't be able to see, you won't be able to see him. You'll be able to hear him.
Okay. All right, cool.
I've got a kind of a unique setup here, so that we can cross talk with the TikTok guests and the YouTube guests.
Very nice. I watch your lives on Sunday anyway, so I see how you switch back and forth.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So that when Dave's available, we can pull Dave in,
Okay.
and he can participate in the conversation because I think he's got some questions as well. Although
Oh,
he
cool.
knows your story much better. But anyways, I think everything is live now. We're live on TikTok. We are live on YouTube on the main channel. If you're watching, if you're in the Discord and you're like, hey, why is this not on the vertical or the horizontal channel on DZ Debates? It's because we're not debating today, friends. We're on just the main channel. We're going to have two friends of the channel come on. Jenny is already with us. Jenny is going to share her background and story in the IFB. She's not just, she wasn't just a member of the IFB. She's like a bona fide insider. We'll share more on more on that. For people who don't know the IFB, we're talking about the Independent Fundamental Baptists, and if you know, you know. If you don't know, you're better off. And then
Yes.
in the second hour, we're gonna bring on another guest named Kim, and if you give me 1 second, I think our friend Dave is gonna join us via audio here in just a moment. Hey, Dave,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear
Can
you.
you hear me? All right, cool.
Yep. All right, and
Appreciate you doing this.
hey, I'm more than happy to do it. Welcome in, Dave. Okay, so Dave, we have a little bit of background audio from your microphone. So I
Let me.
think what it's not a problem. I'm just think just so you know, when your microphone turns on, we hear a little bit of background. So when you're not talking, just leave it muted, and I don't think there won't be any feedback. But
Okay,
you're
cool.
by all means jump in or chime in at any point. Jenny, you already know Dave. Dave, you already know Jenny. We all know
Yeah.
Dave. We all love Dave.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Dave. Oh, I don't know where he went.
That's right. Wait, he'll be back. Okay, so
Go ahead.
with that, then let's get into the good bits. So Jenny, can you first of all tell us about your channel because you've got a channel at least on TikTok. And what else are you involved in?
Yeah, so my channel is Unholier Pod on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on TikTok. I go live with a friend of mine, David Keck, who also has a podcast. We're partners in crime. He is my producer and editor and amazing bestie, as I call him. And we go live every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central on TikTok. I haven't graduated to the YouTube space yet, but we're working on it. And we do that. We actually get on there on Tuesdays. We have a lot of fun. We talk to a lot of the different survivors that we have on my podcast, survivors of cults, survivors of religious trauma, and survivors of the troubled teen industry. So that's sort of in a nutshell what my podcast is all about. And the name, I just want to mention this. I'm sure most of you have heard the term holier than thou. So we came up with the name because really, when you find out somebody who thinks they're holier than thou or has put themselves up on that pedestal to be looked at as a holier than thou person is actually unholier than thou. Because when you pull back that proverbial curtain, you can see that there's a lot of things that are not holy about that person. So that's sort of the in the culmination of cults and church and all of that. It's sort of in a nutshell there with unholier name. So
I love it. That's a good name. So
thank you.
Jenny, I know a little bit of your story, but there's I mean, there's a lot of people here who don't know your story. Can you kind of fill us in on your background and well, I mean, go ahead, take it away. I'm excited for everyone to
Okay.
get to know you.
Okay. So, as Justin said, my name is Jenny, and I grew up in the Independent Fundamental Baptist cult. And I call it a cult because it is a cult. I like to just call things how they are. They do disguise themselves as a denomination, but really, when you get into it, the level of control is very cult-like. And so my dad was a pastor my whole life. I was a pastor's daughter, and but it goes beyond that. So even before I was born, my great grandfather, whose name is Doctor, now I say Doctor because of course in the IFB they like to hand out doctorates to people who actually aren't equipped with the actual PhD. So there's a lot of doctors in the IFB who shouldn't be. So his name is Dr. GB Vick. Dr. GB Vick was essentially the protege for J. Frank Norris. And so, if you know anything about J. Frank Norris, he was one of the founders of the Independent Fundamental Baptist movement. If you do any digging on J. Frank Norris, it's not going to take you long to find out that he was cloaked in scandal. He had a church in Fort Worth, Texas. That was a very large church. And then he started another church in Detroit, Michigan called Temple Baptist Church. And then my great grandfather sort of was mentored by him and took over that church in Detroit, Michigan. And that church became one of the first mega churches in the United States in the 40s and 50s. Unfortunately, it reeked of racism because I found out as an adult, and you can also find this on you, or not YouTube, but Google, that they wouldn't allow baptisms for Black people. So you could
How long
be
did this go on for?
till I believe the 70s or 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of separated. It was around the 70s. They went away from racism and ended up focusing on abortion because racism wasn't catching as many flies as they wanted to.
Yeah. So you have this church that is literally in Detroit, Michigan. And then they go through the riots in the late 60s and all of that. And they ended up having to move locations and go to an area just outside of Detroit, moved the church, built a new building, and all of that. But unfortunately, I am sad to say that my great grandfather was a racist. I mean, there's no way around that. That is a well documented fact. While he might have been a nice guy to a lot of people, he was a racist, and I don't believe in what he stood for in that aspect at all. One fun fact that probably a lot of people don't know, if they know anything about the IFB, they probably don't know the fact that my great grandfather, while he was one of the OGs of the first mega church in the United States, he was never an ordained minister.
Most aren't
I
anymore.
That blew my mind. When my dad told me that, I was like, "Wait, what?" I don't know. I just thought that was crazy. And not only was he not an ordained minister or a legit doctor, but he started his own Bible college in Springfield, Missouri. Now, why he started his own Bible college in Springfield, Missouri, when he was in Detroit, Michigan, that is a mystery to me. I'm not sure if there was like some like holy property or something that he found out there that he was like, I have to start a Bible college right here in Springfield, Missouri. But hence, Baptist Bible College was born. And then him and J. Frank Norris and a couple of other big pastors at the time, I believe Jack Hiles was involved in this as well. They broke off from the Southern Baptist Convention and started the Baptist Bible Fellowship. So, the whole term independent Baptist is not really accurate because they are not independent. They claim to be completely, secluded from any kind of organization and, like the Southern Baptist Convention. If you're a Southern Baptist church, you're part of that convention and you pay dues to that convention, and there's a board that kind of tells your church what to do, what not to do, that type of thing. There's some regulation there, which can be both good and bad at the same time. But the IFB, as we call it, they claim to not have any affiliation with any kind of board or organization, yet most of them were in the Baptist Bible Fellowship. So call it what you will. I mean, it's definitely a syndicate. So back to my story. That was the long and the short of the history in my family.
Now you grew up in it, so like from cradle
yep.
to okay.
Yes, from cradle to, well, not really currently because
To
I'm
heretic.
out now, but yeah. From cradle to divorce, I'll say that. We'll get to that part. But so grew up in the IFB, and just for people who don't understand really what is the IFB, why are you calling it a cult? It is such a controlled environment to, I would say, mostly women. It's a very, patriarchal religion, denomination, cult. They all the way to the point where they will tell women how they're supposed to dress. And it's interesting because, Justin, I caught one of your lives, I believe it was today or maybe yesterday, where you were talking with somebody and you were saying, like, well, we're talking about clothing, right? And it's like, well, men's apparel, they would always say women shouldn't be adorned in men's apparel. That's a verse in the Bible. And they would always say, like, women shouldn't wear pants because it's men's apparel. It's like, well, this was written thousands of years ago. So they weren't wearing pants. They weren't wearing skirts. What exactly were we talking about? Because they were all in like tunics. So it's like, you can't.
Yeah, there's no pants in the Bible.
If you read the verses around that verse, it's crazy because that verse was thrown in the middle of a bunch of craziness.
Yeah. So they like to cherry pick certain things to fit their narrative, as you both know, as you've debated many of these types of people, and their interpretations are just whacked out. But so one of the things was women can't wear pants. We couldn't wear shorts. We couldn't, mixed bathing was another thing. We couldn't go swimming with the opposite sex.
Even if you were like fully covered, like head to toe, you still couldn't?
You could not.
Wow.
Yeah. So
no fun.
We would, yeah, it was not fun. It's very hard to swim being fully clothed. But the guys could swim in swimming trunks with their shirts off, but not with the girls. So they didn't really have a whole lot of restrictions on them. And then another aspect of it was the purity culture was just drilled into our brains. Like, if, as girls in the church and as women in the church, we were taught that if any guy was to stumble or fall, it was our fault. And I could show you all pictures of how I had to dress back in the day, and you would be like, you practically look Amish. I mean, nobody's lusting after that. There's nothing to show. So, but it was our fault if they decided they were, going to be attracted to us. I don't know. So another aspect of the IFB is, the parents, if you aren't listening to your parent, especially your father, there's sort of this, God is going to punish you or something bad is going to happen to you. You're always worried, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to get punished? They always go to the story of Job, which, by the way, is a really effed up story, because it's like God and the devil were they had sort of this bet going on. Like, oh, well, I bet you I could get your servant Job to, deny you and whatever. And then God's like, oh, yeah, go ahead. Do what you want.
Yeah, go mess him up. It's fine. Well, I'll give
And
him
I'm
new
like,
kids later.
yeah. It's like, let me kill your whole family. Let me take all your possessions, your house, your everything. But they love this part. But God's ways are higher than our ways. So he repaid Job tenfold. He had a whole new family. He had more
Sure.
riches than he ever had before. And so this is what we were taught. This was ingrained in us. Like, you basically have to live like a pauper. You have to live like poverty level because your treasures aren't here. Your treasures are in heaven. So you have to work for the church for practically free. You have to be subservient to your dad, your husband, the pastor, do whatever they tell you, and then God will reward you once you die, right?
Right. So did
Which
you
that's
have
a whole
to answer to the pastor as well? Like if
yes.
the pastor's like a dad number two and he's also in
Yes.
control?
Yeah. So, but the pastor was my dad's.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'm already answering to him. So I guess it works out. I only have one guy I have to listen to. Um, so I grew up in that atmosphere and it was very controlling. It was very difficult. And then I went off to Bible college and I started dating somebody in Bible college and he was a Bible major. And for anyone that knows, I also went to a racist Bible college, Bob Jones University. So you can, because that was my dad's alma mater. So I had to go there. And so yeah, we just had to keep it going in the family. Like my
Did
uncles went
they
there. My grandfather, my great grandfather was best friends with Bob Jones Sr. And so, just had to keep it in that line there, keep it going. But
did they
so I
force
went
you
there.
into like a wifely education? Like could you do a real education or did you have to take up like home ec or sewing?
Um, so yes, right. I know what you're talking about. The MRS degree, right? So, because I was raised in that kind of environment, I don't think that my parents would have been against me if I wanted to get like a business degree or if I wanted to be a nurse or something like that. I don't think they would have been like, no, you can't do that. But because my mind was already brainwashed into thinking like my only if I'm going to have a purpose in life, I have to be in full-time ministry because that's what my family is. That's what my like history of my family is. Like we're entrenched in the IFB. And so I need to carry on this tradition. Right. So in my mind, I thought I have to be like a pastor's wife or an evangelist's wife or a missionary's wife or a youth pastor's wife. And so I went to Bob Jones for youth counseling. So, but my minor was home ec.
Of course.
So I had to learn, I still had to learn the basics: cooking, sewing, decorating, entertaining, that sort of thing. So I was there really to get my MRS degree because that's the goal, right? To get married, have children, and be in full-time ministry with your husband. So it really worked out that I was dating somebody who was a Bible major. He wanted to be in full-time ministry. And so we dated for about 3 years. We were in love. We were going to get married. And between our junior and senior year, we went on a little family trip with his parents and him and me and my parents. And the last day, we were sitting at this ice cream shop, and there was a little round table we were all sitting at in this little ice cream shop. And my dad goes, well, we're at a round table. We might as well have a round table discussion. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? And he started drilling my boyfriend about whether or not he was King James only. Now, King James only, I knew you would think that's really funny. Right?
Of course. It's got to be king. If it was good enough
We'll
for
just pause
Paul.
here. It's fine. Also, I was never taught until recently. I didn't know that King James was gay, which that is not taught in the IFB, but they think the King James Bible is literally going to be in heaven.
Yeah. It's
The King James version, like not the originals, because the originals are under the King James Bible. The King James Bible is superior to the originals. So this
You
is
can
what I was
correct
taught.
the original Greek and Hebrew with the King James.
I was about to.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave. You can say whatever you want.
No, I was about to say that because that's what that one preacher says. That I'll throw out the Greek manuscripts and the Hebrew because the King James has it correct.
Yeah. So they say it's superior. We're throwing out the originals, which is where it was translated from. And we're just going to focus on the King James because that is, and they would say things like, this is the only Bible that is authorized by the king. It's like, yeah, well, you also preach against homosexuality. And did you know that he was a homosexual? No, they never talk about that. And honestly, I think 99% of them don't even know that because they just listen to these pastors that for generations have taught the King James Bible is the authorized version, and that is the superior to the original Greek and Hebrew manuscripts. So we're back at this ice cream shop. My dad starts arguing with my boyfriend / fiance because we had everything but the ring. Okay. We were going to get married after our senior year. We were in between our junior and senior year. I had the dress. We had the date. It just hadn't, like, the proposal hadn't come yet. I didn't have the ring. I didn't have the proposal. So we were very close. So my dad started this argument, and then him and his dad started debating because we were 21 at the time, and he wasn't a minor. I wasn't a minor anymore, but you are taught in the IFB, you never question authority. You never speak over authority. You have very high respect for authority. So he just sat there while our two dads argued about the King James Version. And then we left abruptly. We got in the car, and we were 4 hours from home. And as soon as we got in the car, my dad says, "You are not going to marry that boy."
Over
and
the
I
King
knew
James.
at that point it was like it was over. Like there was no, and so again, you have this mentality you're taught. If you go against your parents, God is going to do something to you. He's going to punish you in some way. So we were always scared to do anything. So it's not like I could go run off and elope with this guy. That was even a part of the question at all. It was like, unequivocally, I can't be with this guy. He is no longer God's will for my life, and I have to break up with him. So we broke up. I didn't end up going back and finishing my senior year at Bob Jones. I ended up going all the way across the country, like literally two sides of the country. Like Bob Jones University is in South Carolina, and West Coast Baptist College is in California. So they couldn't get me far enough away from this guy. So go to West Coast. I finish up my senior year. Probably my degree is fake. I don't know. I mean, I've never put it to the test. I've gotten jobs, but like people are like, what's Bob Jones University and what is West Coast? I always have to explain it, right?
Just don't look too deep into it. Don't worry. I took classes, friends.
Yeah. They were not accredited at the time, so probably not legit. So I finished up there, and then I came back home to Detroit, Michigan, because again, my dad was a pastor, and I had this like youth counseling degree. So he was like, well, why don't you go ahead and work at the church in the youth department? We don't have, youth there or anything like that. And, or a youth pastor. And so he had an evangelist friend whose son had also graduated recently from college. And he said, hey, my son just recently graduated. He's looking to be a youth pastor. Do you have any openings at your church? And my dad was like, oh, actually, we do. Come work at our church. So they had sort of conspired to like match the two of us up, which I knew him from years ago. And I never liked him. He was very annoying, very narcissistic personality. So I was not interested in this at all. But if you're from a cult, you understand that when you are told this is God's will or you have to do this, you have to do it. Like you don't have any other options, right? So here I am, fresh off this breakup, and then he brings this can I say douchebag? In
You can say
and he
anything you want. Don't worry. We're on YouTube
okay,
and
okay, good.
TikTok.
I don't want to get like
Yeah.
censored or banned or
If
anything.
TikTok goes
So
down, YouTube keeps going. We're fine.
okay, cool. He brings this DB in and he's like, you know, this is God's will for your life. And I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't attracted to him. I didn't even like his personality. Like, but it's
Yeah.
like, nope, this is God's will for your life.
How
So fast
terrifying is that
forward.
moment? Like, do you think that it was gonna stick, or do you think maybe I can get my way out of it?
As far as like beforehand,
When they told you this is God's will for your life,
it's I looked at it as a sentence, like this is your life. This is your life and you just need to lean into it because there's
okay,
no other options. And so that's how it is in the cult. I mean, you do what you're told and you don't question it. You're not allowed to question it, right? So the really effed up thing is I got married a year later in the dress I was supposed to marry the other guy in on the same day that we
oh,
had planned to get married.
that's rough.
And yeah, and so one of my best friends from college, literally right before I was walking down the aisle, I was in the restroom and I was sort of like panicking, and she grabs me by the shoulders and she's like, "You don't have to do this. I have a car waiting outside. Like, we can get out of here." And I'm like, "What am I supposed to do? There's like 400 or 500 people in the auditorium. Like, I'm terrified, right?" And I'm like, yeah, we'll take off and then God will kill us in a car accident. Like, that's the mentality that you have because that's what you're taught. And I'm like, I have to do this. And so, one thing I want to mention is I have heard my dad do thousands of weddings because he was a pastor, right? I sat through thousands of weddings that he's performed. And I knew the vows by heart. When I got up there to do the vows, everything was the same except he changed one part. The part that he changed made me say, "I choose you to be my husband."
He wanted to alleviate himself of culpability.
Yeah. And
Of course.
the older I get and the more I've deconstructed, the more effed up that is to me. I'm like, I could never do that to my children.
I'd say
You know
it's
what I
your
mean?
dad.
Yeah. And my dad was not, I would consider my dad more on the light side of the IFB. He didn't enforce a lot of stuff, but there were certain things that he was very dogmatic on, like the KJV. And so that was his number one thing in the IFB was the KJV was the Bible. And if you don't believe it, you are not in my realm. And you are not going to be a part of my family. And you are not going to be part of this church. And that was number one. And he died with that mentality. So I ended up marrying this guy. And on the honeymoon, he started physically abusing me and mentally abusing me.
Didn't
Like
even wait for after the
immediately.
honeymoon.
Immediately. I was on the honeymoon and I remember calling my mom from the bathroom crying, and her response was, "Well, this is God's will now, so you need to make it work." And I lived in an abusive marriage for 5.5 years, and the day that I was planning on leaving, he allowed me to have a secular job for a short period of time. And I was actually talking to my boss and an office manager who was a friend of mine, actually from my church, and she had left the church and kind of deconstructed before I had even known what deconstruction was. And I was telling her the situation and my boss, and they were like, "You need to leave him, you know, this and that." And I was telling them that I had missed my cycle that month. And she ran across the street to the CVS and got me a pregnancy test. Now, I hadn't gotten pregnant the whole 5.5 years. So I'm like, there's no way I'm pregnant. Like,
Right, yeah, of
I
course.
don't even need to take a test, right? She's like, "No, you're going to take a test." So I took a test and I was pregnant. So then, of course, my IFB brain goes back to, this is God telling you can't leave him. You're pregnant. You got to stick it out. You got to stay. You got to deal with the abuse. And so I did, because now I have a daughter coming, right? So the abuse actually got worse. And then when I had her, I just kept praying to God, like, I can't live in this situation for the rest of my life. And I don't want my daughter to also live in this situation and think that this is an okay environment, and for it to be okay for her dad to abuse me, and then she'll carry on that pattern because she'll think that's normal, right?
Yeah.
That she would have a spouse someday or a partner someday that would be, she would allow that kind of abuse to happen as well. And I didn't want that for her. So I remember reading a verse in the Bible, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, but it's essentially like, we as like fathers want to give their children good gifts, and even so much more, your heavenly Father wants to give you more, like good, better gifts or whatever. And I thought to myself, now that I'm a parent, I kind of get that. Like, if my daughter was in this situation, I would not expect her to stay because of some religious ideology that I have. I would want her to get out, and I would want her to live her life happy. So I started saying, like, God, I don't want to ruin my dad's ministry, because at the time he became the full-time youth pastor of my dad's church. So as a youth pastor's wife, I'm trying to minister to these teens, and yet I'm in this terrible abusive situation. I have to put on a fake facade every time we go to church and act like everything is great. And so I'm just like living a lie, which I hate. If you know me at all, like I'm who I am. Like, I don't put on a facade. It's like you get what you get. So for me, living that fake life was hard enough, but then you add on the domestic abuse, you add on the fact that I have this child now, you add on the fact that my dad's a pastor and I have to maintain this certain image for his ministry. And so I started praying, like, God, you got to give me a way out of this. Like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And I kept saying, like, you have to give me a very, very obvious way out, so that it's not like I am exposing him, but that he's exposing himself in some way, so that I can get out without it being like a scandal in the church.
Did
I
your
was very
dad? Did you inform your parents of what was happening at home? I mean, your mom knew
Yes.
because you called her on the phone.
Yep.
Did your dad know?
Mm-hmm.
And your dad was basically the whole time just suck it up.
Yeah. So what he did is he got us marital counseling with a Christian counselor. Yeah, but the interesting thing is it actually worked in my favor, because he was concerned about how it would look to the church members, and he didn't want it to cause a church split, right? Which was what I was afraid of too. I didn't want it to cause any kind of scandal in the church. I didn't want it to ruin his ministry or anything like that. So he had this Christian counselor that he knew. And the guy was fairly legit. I will give him that. He would come once a year and do like marital counseling, and he would talk about, psychology and stuff. And usually the IFB is very closed off to stuff like that. They don't believe in therapy. They don't believe in any of that kind of thing. They think that if you have anxiety, depression, any kind of, mental issues, you are spiritually, like, that's your problem. Like, you need to get into the Bible more. You need to pray more. That's what they tell you. So I will say my dad was at least open to therapy, even though he never went.
Of course. I don't need therapy. You need therapy.
Yeah, you need therapy. You guys go. So he gets us this Christian counselor, and the Christian counselor puts us through this test, which is, I guess, a very sophisticated kind of test that they even do on military people. It's called the MMPI. And it's like a 500 question test. And essentially he would tell us, like, if you're lying, I will know right away once I see the test. So I took the test, and he was like, okay, she's honest. Like, she's given the truth. My ex had to take the test 3 times. And he said, after 3 times of taking the test, the counselor was like, either this guy is Jesus Christ himself, or like he obviously doesn't think he has any issues. Like he's a liar, he's a narcissist, like he. And I'm like, hello, thank you for pointing this out, because that's what I've been trying to tell everyone. But it just proved it all. And so the counselor said, legitimately, there's nothing I can do for them, because he doesn't think he has an issue and he's blaming everything on her. And I can't work with that. There's no hope when you can't have two people that are willing to work together. And so that was a good thing. So then fast forward 3 months later, we took about 8 youth group kids to a youth conference at West Coast Baptist College in California. And they sort of promote the school, and they have like activities, and they have special speakers in to basically yell at the students all week and tell them how horrible they are. And so we flew out to California from Detroit, and we were there the very first night. The kids had pulled me out of my hotel room and into the stairwell, and they said, "You need to divorce him." Now,
Kids are smart.
here's these teenagers we're supposed to be ministering to. Like, we're the youth pastor and youth pastor's wife, and they're seeing the abuse firsthand. And they were like, "You need to divorce him. You cannot live in this day in and day out." And I'm like, okay, I can't even deal with this right now. This is so much. Like, go to bed. I don't know. And so we fly back on Saturday. The next day is church on Sunday. Sunday morning, my dad's phone is blowing up with all these parents of these teens in the youth group saying, "We are no longer going to send our kid to the youth group unless you fire him. We want a meeting after church," all this stuff. So literally, I didn't have to do or say anything. He exposed himself, and the teens of all the people that could, the kids were the ones that brought it to the forefront and exposed him. And of course, we had this big meeting after church. He denied everything. It was like, well, we were all there. We were all witness. He just gaslighted us. And my dad ended up firing him. So in the meantime, I'm still living with this guy.
Right. He's got to be upset.
So the abuse got worse. So a lady in our church, she was like, "Hey, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I kind of see that maybe you're having some issues like with abuse and stuff like that. I don't know all the details. I don't need to, but here's a nonprofit organization. I'm going to recommend you go see their counselors and get some help." So I was like, okay, I'm going to go because I need to figure this out. And I stepped in there and talked to a counselor. Within 5 minutes, she was like, "Okay, we need to set up a safe house. Like, you got to go to the safe house. You and your daughter need to go to a safe house." Because at this point, he was threatening me with firearms every night. He had a one of these cocked and loaded on his nightstand, and he would just kind of pick it up every night, show it to me, and say, "If you try to leave,
That's insane.
And so it was a really scary situation. So she was like, "At the very least, you need an exit plan." I didn't even know what that was at the time. So she kind of went through the steps of what to do and to have like a go bag and be ready to get out of there. And what ended up happening was I ended up leaving in the middle of the night with my daughter because there was a blow up episode where he thought he was casting demons out of the house one night. This is like at 2 a.m. And I'm like, "I'm gone. I'm out." And so we ended up getting divorced. And I shockingly and really stupid of me, because I thought that like the people that were there witnessing the abuse would put their arms around me, support me, encourage me, but I was shunned. Divorce, it doesn't matter. Divorce is not something you do in this cult. And so you have to live with abuse. They tell you like divorce is not something that you're allowed to do. Now, if he cheated on me, then I would be okay to divorce, but I wouldn't be allowed to get remarried. So what
Did they
ended up
blame
happening-
you for the divorce?
No, they didn't blame me, but they
Okay.
also thought that it wasn't God's will for me to divorce him, that we should have like
Of course it's not.
kept getting counseling, working it out, getting therapy, that type of thing. So I ended up divorcing him. His entire family just cut me off completely. You know, even though I'm the mother of their grandchildren, their
Hmm.
grandchild and their niece, like I never heard from them, never been any, you know, contact between them. Um, and I want to say too, his dad, he is an evangelist within the IFB, and he always thought that I was, he always called me Jezebel, because I was not like this person that you could totally put in a box. And I always questioned. I was like, well, why do we have to do this? Or why are you asking us to do that? And you don't do that as a woman in the IFB. So he would literally write my birthday and Christmas cards to Jezebel, you know, and he
That's
would refer to me as Jezebel.
crazy. No wonder
Yeah.
his son sounds like that's where he got it from.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. His dad was not very kind to his mom either. So, so when I got out, I was shunned, and I got out of Christianity altogether. I was like, screw this. Like, I have dedicated my entire life to this. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I obeyed my parents. I did everything that my, you know, Sunday school teachers, my youth directors, my teachers, everything told me to do. And look at where it ended me up. Like, I lost my college sweetheart over it. I ended up with this abusive piece of shit guy. Like, the one good thing that came out of it was my daughter. But now I have to go through the next 18 years sharing custody with this guy, which that turned into an absolute hell on earth too. Because some people say, like, okay, after the divorce, like, he'll find somebody eventually and he'll leave you alone and you'll move on and it'll be fine. And, you know, you'll co-parent just fine. Oh my gosh. He was just ramping up. So that was a nightmare. I called that my 18-year prison sentence. Now, luckily, we're done with that. My daughter is wonderful and beautiful human being. She's 20 years old. I'm so proud of her. She's amazing. The good news about this is she is now seeing how her dad is. So she's now able to process on her own what kind of person he actually is. And I'm really grateful. Our relationship is very, very solid and strong at this point. And I just love and adore her so much. And so about 6 or 7 years after my divorce, I met my current husband. And the exciting thing about that is he wasn't religious at all. He didn't grow up in any religion. So he wasn't atheist, but he was, I would say, agnostic. Like, he didn't know, like, he was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, I just, you know, he didn't have an aunt or a grandma or anybody that went to church on both sides. So it was really perfect. And he got to experience my ex on many different levels and really protected me and my daughter and helped us through all of that all these years. And so there was a point, I would say, gosh, probably 4 years into our marriage where I don't even remember what we were going through. We were going through something, and I just felt like this draw that I needed to get back into church. And again, it's that brainwashing, that ideology, like, bad things are happening to you, things are not working out. It's probably because you're not in church, right?
Must be
So
God doing it.
God is punishing you, you know, because the Bible says, like, you know, he's going to chasten you if you're one of his children. And so things were not working out. And I'm like, we should probably just get into church. And he's like, well, okay, well, I'll just follow your lead on this because I don't know anything about it. So we started going to this church, and we were there for about, gosh, 5 years maybe. And then again, it was the same song and dance. It was like, we had the assistant pastor there started sending, like, we got an inappropriate picture from the assistant pastor, and there were things that were like really shady, and like on a group text, like, hey, the group, so he sends this picture and the caption says, is our friendship ready for this?
No, it's not. That's crazy.
And I'm like, what the heck? like, it doesn't matter where we go. Everyone is messed up. Like, we have to get away from this. So, and that was just one incident, right? And so you have this guy who's an assistant pastor who everyone thinks is so holy and so godly, and he's up on the stage every Sunday raising his hands, praising God and closing his eyes and swaying back and forth, and everyone's like, oh my God, and it's like, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. And so it's been, I would say, about 3.5 years we've been out of church. And so my deconstruction obviously happened after my divorce, but like really started fast forwarding after we left that second church. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, we'll never go back to church. Like, this is
I don't
like,
blame
we're
you.
done at this point. And then I tell my husband, I told Dave this today, you're my new pastor, Justin, because I listen to you every Sunday. And I'm like, Justin knows more about the Bible than any preacher or, teacher that I've ever had at Bible college. Anybody that I know that's ever taught Bible, you know more, and you're an atheist. So I'm like, whatever. It worked out.
I can vouch.
So we have
Actually,
to
she
name
told
your
me
church.
She told me that today, yesterday, and a few days ago when we talked. She said the same thing. So
I appreciate that kind of words. So when the divorce and everything happened, was there ever a moment where your father or any other church leadership took responsibility for literally forcing you into an abusive marriage?
Yeah, so there was a moment where my dad kind of started to take accountability a little bit, but then when I met my husband, we were dating, and he had invited me out to lunch one day. And so I'm like, oh, cool. I have the day off. I'm going to go have lunch with my dad. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, my dad starts questioning me about the guy that I'm dating. And then this other preacher comes in. And I didn't know this till later on. And now that I'm in the podcast and I interview people from the troubled teen industry, but he actually owns one of those homes. And I'd only met this guy twice. And he
Hey,
came
Jenny,
in, and yeah.
not to interrupt, but your camera rotated for some reason. I don't know if the table moved, but you're now sideways.
Oh, wait, let me see. Oh, nope. That didn't work. There's my
Uh-oh.
bed. Am I paused?
We can hear you, but it looks like we're looking at your other camera now.
it's a good thing she's not a Christian, because if you flip a camera on a Christian, you don't know what's going to be behind them.
You do not want to know what's going to happen if you flip that
Yeah,
camera.
now I can't even flip it.
Oh, no.
I can't even flip the. Now it's like zooming in on my lanai.
Oh, hold on a second. No, okay. Let me see if I could. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
We're back.
Okay.
We're back.
See, y'all, that if I was still in the IFB, I'd be like, God was
It's the devil.
punishing me for talking about this.
It's the devil. This is that Jezebel spirit again at work.
Yeah.
We've had so many demons in our lives, it's not even funny. It's funny. It's hilarious because we've had so many of them.
I'm being punished right now because of that. So anyway, yeah, you guys, I don't have a fancy studio. I just record here in my little house, and that's what I got. I don't have any fancy, lights or studio or anything like that. Maybe one day, but this is just me. So anyway, we're at this restaurant. Alabama. Yeah, Alabama. Yep. No, I'm in Florida, but anyway, we're at this restaurant, and this guy walks in. I literally met this pastor like twice, and he starts grilling me about the guy that I'm dating. And he's like, you know what the Bible says? You're not supposed to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. This is a sin. You can't do this. And I looked at him and I was like, I don't even know you. I've met you like twice. And also, I did everything to the book. I listened to him, and I ended up in an abusive marriage. So I'm going to do it my way now. And then if I mess up, it's my mistake. It's not on anyone but me. And I ended up leaving the restaurant at that point. And my dad and I our relationship was severed for a little while at that point. But he kind of came around and everything. But to answer your question, he sort of started to take responsibility. And then when things started working out where he saw that my current husband was very loving and supportive and protective and all the things that my first husband should have been as a Christian. And then this guy wasn't a Christian and he was doing all the things. He kind of was like, well, look at how the Lord worked it out.
The Lord worked that out, huh?
Yeah.
How about the Lord shouldn't have done the thing in the first place?
Yeah. So he kind of took a little bit of the heat off of himself because he was like, okay, this guy ended up to work out. Like, it ended up good.
Well,
Right.
at least he's like, he was vaguely approving of the new guy, even though he was an atheist. So
Yeah. Not at first, but in the end he was. Yeah.
okay. So he came around a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
He could see through your Jezebel spirit and see that Lord was at work.
I know, right?
Craziest thing. Were there
Yeah.
ever any repercussions for your ex-husband for the abuse that he put you through?
No.
Never. The church
And
didn't
to
care. Council didn't care.
No. His parents they've never acknowledged any of that. In fact, I recently was contacted by some people because he has a history of IFB in his family too. So his grandfather was the pastor in the IFB for like 50 something years. His dad's an evangelist. His uncles are, pastors and missionaries, and his aunt was a missionary. So it's a very long history of his family as well in the IFB. And so I recently, because of my podcast, I had a few survivors reach out from his grandfather's church saying that they were a victim of abuse under his dad's leadership and his grandfather's leadership. So they have a history of abuse in their family, and so they're not going to say anything to him about it because this is just who they are. And it's okay because they're abusing women and girls, and you have to be submissive to whatever.
Right.
So
I would love for one church. I have never, since we've been doing this, I have never heard of one church actually admit to or apologize for any abuse that has gone on within one church. Never.
That's been my experience as well.
Ever.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, because Kim Kelly's coming on after me. She's been on my podcast. If you guys get a chance, you can watch her episode on YouTube, but also listen to it on any podcast platform that you have. But we had a really great discussion. She's amazing. But the fact is that in the IFB and a lot of these other churches, like it doesn't matter, not just IFB, but I'm just talking from my own experience in the IFB. When there's abuse within the church, when there's somebody that's been essayed or there's like domestic violence or whatever, it is very common for it to be dealt with internally. So they will not contact law enforcement because they don't want a quote unquote scandal in the church. They don't want to be in the headlines. They don't want the community finding out. So it's often dealt with internally with the pastor and the deacons and the individual involved. So
it's not common. It's mandatory. It's mandatory for them to do that. It's mandatory. It's not common.
But they don't care. They're going to do their own. It is mandatory for them to report it, but they don't do it 9 times out of 10.
I'm saying within the social structure of the church, it's mandatory for them to defend the church at all. At all possible.
Right.
Do not report it. They want to sweep that shit everywhere, but to them.
Correct. Yeah. So what that means in terms of what Kim Kelly is trying to do, it makes things very, very complicated, because when you have a system in place that protects the abuser and not the abused, and oftentimes they will either, if this person has a full-time position in the church and then the abuse is brought to the forefront, they'll often move that person to another church.
Yes.
And then they'll use it as, well, God's called this person to another location, right? So the problem with that is not only does the abuse perpetuate, but then you don't even have any police report. You have no charges brought. So if there was a background check run on any of those people, they're not going to show anything.
Right.
So these churches that say, well, we run background checks, we protect our children, we protect our women. Yeah, well, that's great, but that's not going to cover the people who have just been shuffled around because the church wanted to deal with it internally and brush it under the rug. So there's no mechanism in place to really protect people in churches from abusers because they will hide in plain sight. And you'll learn more about that when she comes on. But I just wanted to mention that because my ex is still working in a church. He's still filling the pulpit for the pastor when the pastor goes on vacation. He has worked at various churches in their youth department, even after all this came out and happened. So they kind of look at him as the good one because he's still in the IFB. He's still in church. I am not. And so they're like, oh, she's not in church. She's the Jezebel. She's the problem.
Right. Yeah, because you can do all the abuse you want as long as you maintain your IFB status, you're doing God's work somehow. That's how twisted the system is.
Yeah. Yep.
Jenny, we did have one question from one of our viewers that I think you might be able to help with, if you don't mind. From Daniel says, hey, Jenny, I'm a former IFB and I'm in the process of gathering information to publicly expose certain IFB pastors. Do you know of any good sources or people to talk to about it? Thanks for doing this interview. It is needed.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel, for the question. Yes. So former IFB brother, I'm right there with you, man. Yes, actually I do have sources. So if you could follow the Unholier podcast page and then just send me a message so we can connect and then I can connect you with the right people. So yeah. Thank you for that.
Now,
a lot of what we do isn't on TikTok, with different sources and things that we do. We don't. Yeah.
Right. Now, Jenny, you have a TikTok page that's already linked in the description of the video, but you said you also have a YouTube page as well that you're putting the podcast on, and both of them are under the Unholier Pod, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. I'll make sure that when this live video closes, I'll make sure to add the YouTube channel to the description so people have access to it.
Okay.
But before we move on, we also have some really kind words from the audience. They're really enjoying getting to hear your story. Game Master says, so important to hear the narratives of women in these cults. Thanks for enlightening us. And the reality is, friends, like a lot of times no one hears these stories. Like they get shared maybe among some of the survivors, but the wider population doesn't actually get to hear them. It's critical that people hear what is actually happening on the insides of these conservative cult religions. And Shadow says, so important to hear your story. Thank you for sharing it. And Michael says, all the best. I was trapped in a fundamental Lester Roloff's Baptist home. You know about Lester Roloff.
Yes,
in a Lester
I do.
Roloff's Baptist home. None of these are regulated, and they'd move between states in the middle of the night to avoid prosecution and investigation.
Yep.
We have them mapped out. We have them mapped out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I've had several survivors from Lester Roloff homes on my podcast. So reach out to me as well. Maybe we can talk and get you on if you're willing.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have to do a follow-up sometime and talk about the Lester Roloff situation. There's quite a few people now that we've been able to connect through Dave and others. So I'd love to get a group discussion sometime about the Lester Roloff houses, because it's if you don't know, it's just shocking how much abuse went on. But Jenny, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
You don't have enough open panels for that. We can bring in hundreds of people.
I know, there's
I'm
so
talking.
many.
It's insane.
It's baffling that it went on for as long as it did, to the extent that it did. But Jenny, thank you so much for sitting down and getting your story out with me. And I'm sure we're going to have some follow-up discussions as well on other topics. I really appreciate you joining me. And for everyone who if you missed it, if you need a special reminder, you can find on YouTube and on TikTok at Unholier Podcast. And then I'll have a link in the description of the video. Jenny, thank you so much. I really appreciated you spending some time with me.
Yeah, thank you, Justin and Dave. I appreciate you guys inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share my story and to get the word out about the Unholier podcast. My mission and my goal is to give survivors a voice and give them a platform to share their story, because for so long my voice was silenced and I was not able to warn others about the cult and the different things of the IFB as a woman. And so it's been such an amazing opportunity to have this platform tonight. And of course, the podcast has been a real great opportunity for me to elevate those voices as well. So if anyone's listening who is a survivor of a cult, religious trauma, or the troubled teen industry, please reach out. And I'd love to talk to you and maybe have you on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.
Love you, Jenny. Talk to you later.
Jenny's fantastic. We have a second guest lined up, and Dave, you know our second guest as well. Let me grab
the beast.
Yeah, let me grab the video feed. Give me 1 minute. There we go. And I think Kim looks like she's ready to rock and roll. Give me 1 second to change the guest name in here. That way we got the right name for the recording.
A year ago, we couldn't figure out filters. Now you're doing this.
I know, right? We've come a long way, buddy. Welcome in. Okay, we have a friend of the channel, Kim Kelly, with us. Let's make sure all the audio is working. Oh, sorry. I apologize. That was my bad. We should be able to hear you.
Okay.
I am going to turn your volume up a little bit, though.
Sure thing.
Okay. Now I think I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah. Am I coming
Awesome.
through clearly?
Yes. And can you hear Dave?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Kim? That's
Oh, yeah. I can hear you now. Yeah. What's up, Dave? I appreciate you guys having me here.
Great to have you. Before
She's kind of drowning out though. I think your microphone, Justin. I think your microphone actually is like interfering, because like as soon as you get done talking, their microphone kind of turns down and then it comes back up. So.
Okay, 1 second.
Is that better?
It's a little quiet and echoey. Hold on.
My dog, y'all, if you see some squirrely eyes behind me.
All right, let's see if that's any better. I'll turn my mic down a little bit as well. That way you're not getting too much of me. Okay, I think everything seems to be working. There's no echoes anywhere that you can hear, right? Oh, never mind. Kim, do you have
Yes.
do you have headphones?
Do you hear an echo?
I don't hear an echo. Is it me or is it?
Oh, hold on. Everybody's echoing right now. That's new.
Well, then it's you. If it's everyone, it's you.
I don't hear any echo. I'll mute right now and let me know if you stop.
Yeah, 1 second.
Kim, I told you it's just, a year ago we couldn't even figure out how to use filters on TikTok. So here we are. I mean, well, Justin, I mean, not me. I was just, yeah, we get crazy.
Hold on. I muted Dave real quick. I think Dave was probably the problem.
The problem.
Dave's always the problem child. All right, I think we should be good. I can hear you okay. I'm not echoing through your
Cool.
microphone. You're not echoing through my microphone. So
Awesome.
we
Let's
should
do it.
be ready to rock and roll. All right, so Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. I
having me.
got to hear a little bit about you, and I told Dave to not tell me everything so that I can hear some of your story fresh live. So Dave was so excited to introduce us. He wanted to tell me everything about you. And I was like, you got to save some for the live stream.
Organic reaction. Yeah, I can summarize because there's like, lots to this crazy story. I have this real dark humor, authentic smile about these really dark things. So that's my disclaimer. It's not an apology, but like it's my chosen form of healing. Anyway, I laugh at dark things when I'm yeah. So I was born and raised in a religious cult. It's one of the most notorious cults in the world. That's the short version. It was a Christian cult, or at least everybody called themselves Christians. All right, here's the point though. There were tens of thousands of children born and raised in this cult. So this cult originated in the late 60s. For anyone who studied cults, it started as the Children of God. I think it started with something other. Anyway, cults always rebrand with negative publicity, so they change their name a lot, but that's a different subject we'll get back to. Anyway, Children of God is the most notorious name for it. That being said, it's the most notorious not only in terms of size and harm and impact, but also because of the bad things. We're going to keep our language soft, but the bad things to children that they're infamous for. Now, to give more context here, my mother was one of the top leaders. That is not a flex. That means she is one of, worked her way up the ranks, right? You have to be very evil and psychotic to be able to qualify for those positions. So you can Google this. My mother wrote the manual of terrible things to children that affected tens of thousands of children. I'm keeping my words soft. I don't know how soft we need to be. She literally wrote the manual on child abuse. So again, no flex. My point here is that I was raised by evil psychotic people, and I'm big on psychology, not only to understand and reverse engineer this, but because we can't solve a problem we don't understand. Also, I see a lot of people pretending to solve this problem that don't understand it. It's not helping anyone. So again, with the dark humor, right? I'm a survivor of this. There's a lot of people that want to call things like child trafficking a theory, right? We can unpack like why it's been politicized and stigmatized and what it is, as well as what it isn't. The point though is that it's a real thing, and I'm very happy for everyone who doesn't understand what it is, right? I do a lot to educate people about it, but I really focus on what we can actually do about it, not the gory details, and definitely not the conspiracy theories, because those are not helping anyone. So I just want to put it out there, right? Y'all have heard some kooky things from kooky people that did not know what they're talking about. Anyway, there's a lot of people exploiting the problem of child trafficking and trauma and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of people getting away with doing bad things to children under the guise of yay God, which is what I call
the Children of God is also, wasn't it also known as the Family International?
Yeah, like I told you, they changed their names a bunch of times and rebranded. The most famous names were the Children of God, the Family International, which is their current like washed up online church form of what they are now. Anyway, they had some other names, etc., like the Family of Love or whatever. They're most famous for, among critics, right? Pedophilia, as well as trafficking, as well as a lot of other forms of abuse. Now, what society doesn't really comprehend is that there's a huge difference with an adult who decides to join a cult, is persuaded, is coerced to join a cult, and a child who is born and raised into it and has little to no access to the outside world, much less advocacy or support. So the way I oversimplify that, right? It's like being born and raised under a rock, and you're told from day one that red is blue. And that's your normal, because that's all you know. And that's also what every single picture on every wall, every song you're allowed to listen to, every adult in your environment, every piece of information you're allowed to access, which is written by the cult, reinforces this belief that red is blue, so that that's your normal and that's how you grow up. Now, if you have a very extensive mind like mine, you may start asking questions. And you'll definitely get shut down, but they'll definitely, even if you're like, well, I feel like sometimes red could be red because what if? And they're like, no, you must take it by faith. And by the way, you're terrible for asking questions, etc. So again, like thoughts and prayers to every adult, but as a child, right, you don't have a lot of options. We're not even talking about consent. We're saying we don't have context to the outside world. Then to take this analogy a little further, you're told, like, let's pretend we're born and raised on Mars and we're told Earth is a flaming ball of fire, right? You're told the outside world is dangerous and God will bad things and like you won't make it out there, to say the least. Also, you have no physical support. My family is in this cult, like that's a net negative, right? I don't exist on paper. We didn't have an education or medical care or like anything people can relate to in a normal childhood. So also, this was an international cult that was in almost every country around the world. So my mother is from Dallas, Texas. I was born in Brazil. No reason. Anyway, parents thought it'd be a great idea to raise 5 white girls in third world countries. Yeah. So my sisters were born all over the place. Anyway, take 8-year-old me in Brazil, 5-year-old me in Brazil. Take 10-year-old me in Mexico. Okay, let's go to Brazil. Let's pretend that I was able, I'm going to give more context here. These are cult compounds. We had about 50 to 150 people in these compounds, bunch of children. We lived communally. This was all very biblical, of course, with a little cult twist. Anyway, let's pretend I could have like snuck out of the room and snuck past the adults and past the scary guard dogs and literally jumped over this wall with the glass and the barbed wire stuff at the top. Like, let's pretend I could physically escape. Let's pretend. Then where would I have gone? Second question, would I have been safer in the streets of Brazil?
Doesn't seem that way.
Right. So what I'm unpacking is like, okay, my focus today, what I do now, I'm not only an advocate, I'm also a consultant, I'm a strategist, I'm a little bit of a bully to the politicians that are in the way. I'm here to work with the people that are actually here to solve problems, not just raise money and exploit the problem. I'm a little salty, as you can tell. I think it's healthy, dark humor, but there's a need, on a serious note, like there's a need to actually understand the problem and then have a effective response to it, right? So the official way to say that is trauma informed, meaning understand the problem and make sure you're actually helping people, not just throwing thoughts at prayers and things, not just giving them some candy and toys and calling that a day, not just giving them a place to stay even for one night, even though I never had that. But my point is, do we really understand the problem in a way that ensures we are helpful to the actual victims, or in taking down the bad guys, or in whatever we're doing to eradicate this issue? Okay. We can talk more about corruption in nonprofits, but the spoiler alert is there are a lot of people simply exploiting the problem, not a lot of people helping. All right. Now, what I do today, ironically, I also train law enforcement. Again, dark humor, but here's the short version. I've worked undercover. I've done a lot of things over the years to do the real work. And legally, we need law enforcement there. And it'd be really great if they were helpful. And I've seen way too many situations where the help was not helpful and often even made things worse. So when you're in the heat of the moment, like I don't even have to unpack this for you, but you can understand what it's like being a survivor of this evil, and then volunteering, emphasis, don't make money on this. This is not my career. I fund all this work. Anyway, I'm over here doing their job for them, and they're over there sitting in the corner. But then when we need them to like step in and do some things now, there's a lot of incompetence. And that's, frustrating to say the least, because obviously, this is not the time to guess. So when training isn't given, a lot of mistakes are made. A lot of silly things happen and bad guys get away with it, right? Beyond that, though, we could actually redirect law enforcement from, I think what we can all agree on should be everyone's priority, which is protecting children in our communities, but in a way that's actually effective. Now, I already know there's a lot of people, I can't see the comments, right? But people are like, why are you training law enforcement? You're training the devil. And, that's, here we are, all of us acknowledging problems. The difference is I've stepped in to help solve these problems, right? I wouldn't be here if there weren't problems, number one. Number two, I don't see a lot of people that know what they're talking about. And number three, I know a lot of law enforcement that really wants to help. Now, I'm talking about individuals. There's a lot to understand about law enforcement and the structure. And honestly, like most people don't understand how it's supposed to work, much less the failures in their community and what we can actually do to help. Again, you can't solve a problem you don't understand. So it's been incredible to actually see a lot of really positive things happening, a lot of unlikely heroes stepping up to help, and a lot of people coming together who have been burned by people who are operating under bias instead of a solutions-oriented approach. So again, like we can unpack corruption all over this place here, the corruption that supports the industrial scale industry of child exploitation and trafficking in the United States. Why is that thriving? We can talk about corruption within things like law enforcement and local, state, and federal, etc. There's also a lot of there's also a lot of corruption within nonprofits and even groups that are actually cults getting away with doing bad things to children, but with the front of yay God. So people look the other way and allow it under the guise of religious freedom.
Right.
But Kim, let me say one thing. People cannot complain about a problem that they want solved unless they're actually getting up and trying to solve the problem.
I agree with you. I'm also trying to be fair about, like, I'm not asking everyone to dedicate their whole life to this work, right? My challenge to everyone is to pick one thing they can do to be part of the solution. Because I wholeheartedly agree with you, but I'm also not like demanding everybody's, focus. However, I don't think we have an excuse to do nothing when it comes to children being harmed in our country. I don't think we should be the generation that allows this to continue thriving. Like, I'm actually pretty hardcore about this. And let me put it this way. I'd be like on a beach piecing out of humanity a long time ago if it wasn't like this hell no moment about understanding. Look, it's one thing to understand why I escaped and overcame and, what that even means and etc. It's very different to comprehend that this is such a big problem still today in America and that so many people are ignoring it intentionally, while politicians use terms like protecting children to get votes and, sign new bills and things. But on a federal level, I don't see an intentional effort to actually combat this problem. Now, I know you asked me to tell my story and I can get back to that, but I feel it's important to first frame like what we're talking about, the size of it, the intensity of it, and then, maybe people can understand a little more like the passion as to why I'm here, why this matters, and also what everyone can do to be part of the solution.
Yeah. And to be sure, for people who don't know, the children. Oh, what's that, Dave?
Oh, I said that's why we want to do this. This is about protecting the children, and so many people sit on their couches scrolling through TikTok and complain about certain things that happen, but they don't actually get off their ass and actually do something. Kim is the epitome of getting off her ass and actually doing something about helping children.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's, awareness matters. I think awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate. It's important. However, awareness is only step one. Awareness is just acknowledgement. Step two is taking action. So my analogy for that is like, if we just stand there and acknowledge the fact that our house is burning down, but we don't go put the fire out, like that's not that helpful, right? Or if we're like, it's never burned down before, I haven't seen it on the news yet, I'm not a fireman, I don't, I just can't be bothered right now, it's going to burn to the ground. Or we can go save what we can. So I try to keep a very grounded, realistic approach to, again, understanding the real problems and the real solutions, because they're not what the media or the politicians are saying, right? There's also a lot more solvable aspects of this problem than people think. So I think knowledge is power if we choose to do something with it. And I know for sure, if little old me is out here eradicating darkness with this little light of mine, you know what I mean? I don't think anyone has an excuse not to.
Right. Couldn't agree more. Let's start at a little bit of background information on where you came from, because if you don't know the Family International or the Children of God cult or their various names, they've kind of they've streamlined the abuse process through really early on the idea that we can use sex for evangelism. How since you were actually part of the cult, how pervasive is this?
All right, so it's a good question, but I'm going to kind of correct the premise. So again, it started in the late 60s. Let me put it to you like this. Okay, I was born in 89, all right? By the time I was born, there was a lot of children already born into this cult. Decades had gone by. In the very early days, there was a lot less oversight. It was during this free love, hippie, and Jesus movement era of the United States. So things were different back then, okay? Now, this cult started very puritanical, again, like this hippie Jesus movement type thing, but they would separate the men and the women and just kind of Christian Jesus freak stuff. It spiraled into this very free love type weirdo cult. Okay, again, this was before I was born, but they went into all these different countries. You can look into it. There's been a lot of experts that study this cult. It does seem that the founder was on the run often from Interpol and other international agencies. It does seem like they were maybe covered for or assisted, but I can talk more about that later. Anyways, before I was born, people like my mother, who, you know, really sold her soul for cult power, worked her way up to this position of, she actually became the cult leader guy's babysitter. Anyways, whatever, worked her way up into power, but she was also like the Ghislaine Maxwell of the group. What I mean by that is that they had a pretty strong focus on recruitment, as most cults do. And we could even say most religious organizations are very focused on fundraising and recruiting, right? I'm going to focus on this cult, but I also want to talk about the 10 patterns of every cult because it's a playbook. So they were all over the world, a lot of American people, mostly young people, we'd say. And they came up with this thing called flirty fishing, which was quite literally religious prostitution. So we talk to them about Jesus and they give us money because we're winning souls for the kingdom. It was like a apocalyptic cult combined with this weird sex culty weird stuff. So anyway, there was like this urgency of like the rapture and the weight of the world, and we have to win everyone for Jesus. And that's why there's this like cult, you know, the urgency aspect. And then there was also this like free love and love is God and love is love aspect of it, which morphed or expanded more and more, unfortunately, to where it was not only accepted, but promoted to share God's love with children. Okay. So there were 2 reasons that I did not suffer worse abuse. I just happened to be born last in my sibling lineup. My oldest sibling suffered some of the most unimaginable evil. They were raised with the actual leader, David Berg. You can Wikipedia this stuff, like this stuff is all over the internet. There was 60 Minutes, there was Larry King Live, there was all kinds of even international news, meaning a lot of people filming the problem. That didn't help us, the children, anyway, but there's a lot of information about this out there. I'm summarizing a whole lot here. My family had kind of this unique cult within a cult experience because of our upbringing with leadership, which please believe is not less traumatic, meaning like these are the most evil people, the worst abusers that maintain and earn these positions of power, like my mother. So in the early, in the 70s, etc., those kids had some of the worst of the worst. And my upbringing was almost night and day different to them, although no one with any semblance of a childhood could relate to my childhood. So for context, right, by the time I was born, here's the second reason why I suffered less abuse is because I was born in 89. I think it was like 92 and 93. There was a series of international raids. It did seem coordinated because it was all around the same time, but it was several different countries around the world. For context, I was born in Brazil. I was in Brazil at that time. The nearest raid to me was in Argentina, so not even in the same country. We had hundreds of cult compounds in every country, many in, the larger countries, etc. So I'm going to speed up this story, but there's a lot to take away from it. Local authorities raided the cult compounds. They arrested the adults. They rescued the children, and they put them into institutions. Again, I'm speeding up the story. A big takeaway, though, is that people probably read headlines that said children rescued, right? Unfortunately, in those institutions, a lot of children suffered worse abuse, and some babies even did not make it. However, fast forward a couple short years, there was an international court case out of UK with, I think it's Lord Justice Wallace or something like that, this UK judge. And you can read it like a 185-page dissertation. Again, this is all court documents. Go for it. Lists of abuse and children. Woo, the bad things. That cult was acquitted. 2 short years, unpacked that corruption on an international level. They were like, although we see this is really crazy and probably not safe for children, and we believe, and here's all these experts think it's not safe. But anyways, goodbye. And everyone went home and not one adult was convicted.
Crazy.
And you best believe the children were returned, meaning nothing happened. Everyone can go home. It's fine. Never mind. So lots more to be said there, but lots of takeaways. Just because the headlines say children are rescued does not mean children are safe. I'll give the local authorities the benefit of the doubt, like they didn't probably know what to expect or have the resources to handle 50 kids. Great. But also, What it did do, it reduced the predator's ability to operate. Awareness makes it harder for bad guys to get away with doing bad things to children. So this, ready? Religious persecution, for righteousness' sake, it forced the cult to pretend to be less abusive. They literally implemented age minimums and a book that they called the charter that had like rules and minimums and maximums, and we had less bad things compared to those of my older siblings. However, our stories did not end there. We were not given education or medical care or, access to the outside world. The limited access we had to the outside world was when we were sent outside the compound walls to fundraise in third world countries. Again, I was mostly in Brazil. I was raised mostly in Brazil and Mexico. We could unpack so much more about the group dynamic, the group think, the psychology. But again, let's focus. Let's remember this, right? My parents and tens of thousands of other grown-ass adults or young adults or whatever it is. Like, let's do a little case study on my mom real quick, okay? She's out of Dallas, Texas. Her family was like wealthy Baptist people. Anyway, my mother was a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Fun fact. In the late 60s. She was, lost and searching and vulnerable and like hippie, druggy, college student, whatever, free love and hugs and Jesus and yay, gets on board. All right, super fun, yay, wonderful. Then you have children, right? And every single day, this is my opinion, every single day that you continue making that decision to stay in this environment and raise your kids in this environment, like that is a daily choice. And no matter where you came from, you do have context of what the outside world is. Earth is not a flaming ball of fire, but you're perpetuating this belief that Earth is a flaming ball of fire, right? And that God will smite you down and that this is God's highest will and that terrible things to children is God's love. And like, the amount of psychological manipulation and all that, right? We know how effective brainwashing is on adults. Just understand how that is on a child. And then acknowledge the process of deprogramming yourself to the extent that as a child, not only do you have the courage to ask questions, because that takes courage in those environments, and to keep pushing and to be logical and all of that, but then to make that leap of faith, knowing you don't exist in the outside world, you have no support, you'll be cut off from everything and everyone you were raised with, etc. And then you make that leap of faith anyway, because you're like, you know what, I'd rather burn in a ball of flames than stay here. And you make that leap of faith and you land there and you're like, oh my God, I didn't burn. And then you're like, now what? Like literally now what? I didn't have no support system. So I hit the ground running. I worked hard. I did things I'm really proud of, meaning there's a lot of different people's experience and how they were able to leave. Like just, my oldest sister was in like Moscow or something. She was like 18 when she escaped, and there was like this KGB, like, bro, crazy things of how children and young people were able to get out, right? So I have huge respect. And by the way, I want to acknowledge, get out of this crazy, crazy environment and then get into this crazy unknown world again with zero support and try to survive out there, right? And then some of those
Were you split from your
kids who
siblings
escaped
when you were younger?
I have a 14-year age difference from my older sister. So I remember when I have a really crazy good memory. So I remember when she left Russia, I was 5 years old. We didn't see her for a long time. She left this cult when she was 18. Anyone who left was like an antagonist and this demon possessed, whatever they call that. We had to like pray against her and stuff. So we were very estranged. Anyway, the short answer to your question, the short answer to your question with all the dark humor is like, man, a lot of kids had a lot of parents all over the place and we didn't really have the individuality of families. Dark humor. But the good thing is my mom didn't raise us because she's, one of the worst abusers, but then she gave us to the worst abusers. So that wasn't great. There was a lot of, physical, mental, emotional, sexual, like all the things. So I grew up for the most part with three of my other sisters. Anyway, a lot of us have half siblings and it's real complicated and we just don't go there, but not don't go there, but I mean we don't even try to figure that out. So we laugh about it all. Anyway, all that to say, like, I have, the way I'm wired, if you will, you can see the dark humor and the sarcasm, right? But it's also like, I'm truly the happiest person I know. You know what I mean? Like, talking about this stuff doesn't make me cry, doesn't make me angry. For sure, there are certain things that are hard to talk about. But why I'm talking about this, it's not to tell a sad story from 30 years ago, a problem no one solved. It's not about that. It's about this problem today that so many people are willing to ignore. It's the one that so many politicians are willing to exploit, yet none of them are even brave enough to talk about, much less act, right? So let me ask you a rhetorical question. When we're talking about child trafficking, okay, it's a sale and exploitation of children. Just to define terms real quick, we're not just talking about child abuse, okay? There's this whole spectrum of terrible things, all types of bad things. All right, separate spectrum of trafficking. 100% of trafficking is abuse. Not all abuse is trafficking. Tracking? So, child trafficking in America. It's generating at least $76 billion every year. Every single year. That's more than all professional sports combined.
It's crazy.
It's the fastest growing, and it's the second largest criminal enterprise on the planet. Second largest, bro. Like, this is not a top 20 issue. Yeah, I could blow your mind with more stats, but here's my rhetorical question now that I've quantified it a little bit. Okay, ready? Why doesn't our federal government have a federal agency that's dedicated to combating human trafficking?
Because they're incompetent? They don't care?
Is it incompetence or is it intentional? Like, let me frame this a different way. You know how there's the war on drugs, and that's not very effective, right? We could use the word incompetence, but a lot of politicians have made a lot of sounds with their mouth referencing it for votes and support. Am I right? Anyway,
I mean,
whatever's
theoretically,
happening there,
some
the
of them
point is,
would
like,
be involved. If they started a group to out the pedos,
so
they would
that's
be
why
on the
it's a
list.
rhetorical question, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not actually pretending like the federal government would be effective at solving this problem. I'm raising awareness about the fact that they're not even pretending to care. They're not even trying to get our votes or launder money pretending to care. They're straight up. Did you know we have federal agencies for education and water and like 50 other things I could list that you're like, we have an agency? We have like a whole agency for water, okay, but not for human trafficking, like not even child trafficking, human trafficking. We don't. So like the FBI does some things, HSI, DHA, it's like we have some people that do, there's like departments within we don't have a federal agency that's dedicated to it. So I could ask a lot more rhetorical questions, but emphasis on rhetorical. I want people to unpack the logic for themselves, right? Wrong answers only. Wouldn't protecting children be the thing that should unite us all? Like, if I was a politician and I wanted everyone's votes, wouldn't that be like the easy, low-hanging fruit of like, I'm gonna do something helpful? Wouldn't you at least pretend to care for them? We see them doing that with everything else, right? So like, why are they not even making sounds with their mouth? More specifically, like, we've never heard the term child trafficking on a presidential debate stage, live in front of the world. That's kind of your opportunity to trash your opponent, is it not? Why are we not even pretending to care? Wrong answers only. Is it incompetence or is it intentional?
I mean, it seems intentional, yeah.
Either way, it's unacceptable. But again,
Kim, can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this because we haven't talked that much. A lot of times, the one who is abused becomes the abuser. Have you seen any of that? Has anyone who has been abused become the abuser that you know of?
I want to like frame the question and the answer. I'm not trying to be long-winded. I'm very targeted, not only with words and stuff, not because of the word, but because we need to understand this problem. Okay, so here's the short version. Hurt people hurt people. Also, healed people heal people. Meaning, just because you were abused does not mean you will abuse. Absolutely not. There are many survivors that turn into the absolute opposite of what they were told to be or trained to be or what the bad guys did or whatever it is. However, we do have an epidemic of hurt people hurting people in society today, but that goes pretty broadly applied, right? So I can
I mean, let
unpack,
me
like,
take you a little
if
bit
we're going to
deeper.
get into the characteristics of predators, I would have to unpack more characteristics to really frame the pattern. Because, in other words,
Right.
having been abused as a child is not the pattern. Does that make sense? That can be a contributing factor to the pattern or the characteristics as a whole if we're building like a target package. Does that make sense?
Right. I'm talking about like a closed system, where you don't know the outside world and you're abused. Do those
Oh, from
you're
within
abused
these
become
controlled environments.
right. That's, yeah.
Oof. All right. This is hard to talk about. So we're, um, when children are taught that behavior, they will, when children are taught and forced in that behavior, yes, absolutely. Children, okay? Those children can often grow up, and because of this psychological manipulation process called grooming, meaning how the predator desensitizes the child to harmful and inappropriate behaviors, absolutely that can be a thing you can teach kids to do. Now, again, children are innocent sponges, right? The red is blue analogy is to oversimplify like a whole lot there. I don't focus on the gory details, but the answer to your question, of course, in these environments, if they believe that it's God's highest will for an adult with a child, look, I'm not going to be graphic, but like the book my mother wrote had images and descriptions and depictions of all of this. And my sister as a baby.
And Kim, the only reason I ask this is because I want people to understand how deep it really goes. I want people to actually truly understand how deep it goes, that you could take a child and teach them to do heinous acts to others. That's why I always ask the question.
Just imagine, yeah, no, like I get where you're coming from. That's why, then imagine being told that that's love. Again, brainwashing is very effective on grown-ass adults who know better. Imagine that being your context of what is love as a child. This group was very infamous for the thing that rhymes with edophilia, like I mentioned. And again, that is not only being instructed to you, that's a whole process, and everything I'm saying people can look up. I'm not recommending you look for the graphic details, but I am saying these were people who called themselves Christians who absolutely, and some to this day, believe that was God's highest will, that it was showing God's love, that because God made pleasure, that kids must, like, it goes so deep. That being said, this is definitely not specific to this cult, right? Now we can go all over the place with this. There's a lot of, there was a psychiatrist. Do you guys know who Alfred Kinsey is?
I don't.
Oof. Side, like unrelated to the cult, you should look up the name Alfred Kinsey, and I haven't, anyway. He contributed to a lot of research that led a lot of trains of thought that, he experimented on many children a day and collected data on the response to trauma and made people believe that because they like it, it's good. And that same education is still affecting a lot of things in society today. Look up the Kinsey Institute. This piece of shit has a statue outside. I'm just, saying there's a lot of this inwoven within our society that people are unaware of, and it influences a lot more than we understand. There's also a lot of trains of thoughts and people, experts who have studied cults, specifically this one and others, that they believe that, a lot of times there's somewhat of an experiment where you observe groups of people and their reaction to things, and you collect data and things like that. I don't have proof of that. It's plausible, but my point is we definitely have evidence of our government, of our society, being very intentional about bad things happening to people, sacrificing people for profits and power, right? In my opinion, like, just please know there's, escaped this cult when I was 20 years old. Fast forward about 10 years, I was doing really good things in the world. I had multiple businesses. Like I was, anyway, trauma responses. I'm a workaholic, but anyway, I do good things, so it's fine. Point is, though, when it came to my attention, it was 2019. We were doing this awareness campaign. One of my companies, we did awareness campaigns for different good causes. I would thoroughly vet the causes because I'm very skeptical of nonprofits. Anyway, we did one for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, women and children, and the MMIW cause, if you guys know anything about that. And it was my first 360, going, understanding that problem is a huge issue today. Number one, like, why is nobody talking about this? It was my what the fuck moment with, like, how is this a thing, right? I had seen bad things far, far away, and 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but like, I think all of us would like to think that could never happen in our country. There's no way that's true. You must be exaggerating and being dramatic, right? I really wish that was true. In digging into the data or lack thereof, but what we can prove, right? It's not only alarming that this stuff is thriving, but also that it's so protected and supported and even funded to some extent. So that's a whole other rabbit hole there. But my point is that if we were just to quantify, right, $76 billion a year is what was on record a couple years ago. And believe traffickers ain't filing taxes. So whatever's reported is barely scratching the tip of the iceberg. You know what I mean? Most of this is not reported. Nobody knows the real numbers, but let's go with what's reported. Imagine how many children that is every single year. Imagine if it was only 100 children a year, though. Let's go more realistic. Imagine if it was only 10,000 children a year that are being trafficked in America. We're not hearing about that. Why do we know every detail of XYZ celebrities dress at XYZ event, but we don't know about child trafficking in America? Well, you know, I could ask a bunch more rhetorical questions, but you see where I'm going with this. It definitely seems to me like our politicians are too cowardly and corrupt to even make sounds with their mouth about it. And my initial approach when I revisited this was trying to get everyone else to do their jobs. It's logical, right? I was like, let me just go help them and tell them and make sure they play nice. And it came to my attention pretty quickly that there are a lot of people, again, exploiting the problem. And there's even more people, it seems, protecting the problem, or at least very uninterested in solving this problem. So my brain thinks in systems, and, you know, I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, and I enjoy these like psychology type things and understanding problems and reverse engineering them. So I've identified certain, let's call them major industries or aspects of our society that seem to be closest to the root cause. In a word, I would say the root cause is corruption, just to understand the premise, right? But to be more targeted, right? Why is this thing thriving? Why don't we see efforts against it? Why don't we see support for survivors? Why are people getting away with it, right? Now, I want to unpack a pattern that I see play out in society today that this cult certainly used. Now, again, the premise was that we were Christian missionaries. And we were always fundraising for Christian missionary work, or like, you know, winning souls for Jesus and whatever. All right, you can call that grifting. You can call that money laundering. Lots going on there, but I'm just going to stay with the point here. The premise, though, was yay, God, right? We were like mostly American people and children being trafficked all over the world. So granted, we were like the token foreigners, and that's already kind of exotic, I guess, and things were different back then. You know, a lot of this was before the internet. Like, I get it. There's differences in how that played out. But I also want to focus on the 4 years of my childhood that I was in the United States, from the age of 10 to 14. Obviously a child, okay? Not like maybe 18. No, pretty obviously. I had more of a baby face back then, okay? Now imagine every single week and weekend, I was on the streets. I was in restaurants, I was in shopping malls, I was in grocery stores, I was in people's houses, I was in all kinds of famous landmarks and locations in the Houston, Texas area, which, by the way, is to this day one of the biggest hotspots of human trafficking in the country.
Houston,
Texas, Harris County.
It's like the
That's
most
just
Christian
personal to me,
state in
too.
the nation.
No,
In
and
Texas,
actually, there was a
Texas
church who
is one of the
actually took
biggest
a bunch of
states.
children to the homeless bridge and created a bunch of havoc down there. So yeah, outside of Houston's really bad.
Yeah, Texas is one. Granted, it's a massive state and it's a border state, but no one knows the real numbers. I reference data very, with a grain of salt, but it's definitely one of the most popular states for trafficking. Let's put it that way. I've seen things like top 2. I'm not sure how they're sure. Anyway, okay, so imagine driving by like a busy intersection in Houston, Texas, and you see like a 10-year-old, 12-year-old girl there on a street corner, like raising money for Christian missionary work, right? Thousands of people drove by me, asked me questions. Thousands of Christians debated me on which denomination we are and all these exhausting things. You know, it occurred to me a couple years ago, not one person asked me if I was okay.
Right.
Not one concerned citizen or law enforcement officer had that awareness.
Yeah, a little kid holding up a sign by her lonesome on a curb. That's
right. Or like
that's
alone
weird.
in a restaurant making, you know, like selling things and fundraising, whatever. Like, hi, why aren't you in school? Where are your parents? What, you know what I mean? It's not like a kid basketball team where we're all there. It's like a couple kids on this. What? Not one person had that awareness to ask questions. Now, here's where things get complex. And here's why I train people today, because we have to understand this problem in order to solve it. Okay. Did you guys know that unlike all the conspiracy theories you've read, the number one most reported form of child trafficking in America is familial trafficking?
I actually did know about this one. Which is crazy, but believable.
Yep. It's also not the scary bad guy jumping out of a white van with a mask and a weapon. It's people the kid is supposed to trust. It's people the kid already knows. And again, when it's the parents, that makes it very difficult to identify the victims, but also like, how do we help them?
Yeah, where are they going to go?
This, correct. So like hypothetically, if a law enforcement officer had asked the right questions and was like, you can't be here, I'm taking you home, and had actually taken me home, they would have taken me home to my parents who were trafficking me, right? So my point is, it's not that there's an easy fix to all of this, but here's what it would have done. I could have spent less time on the streets. Awareness would have reduced the predator's ability to operate. More importantly, I think around 10,000 children would have spent less time on the streets if someone had asked the right questions. That could have led to answers, that could have led to, you can't have kids out here grifting for you, and by the way, you need to have them in school. Just imagine like if we could have had like a little support or like an education, you know, there could have been something that absolutely could have meant tens of thousands of children would have had a childhood. So I tell that story for a few things. Like I didn't look like a, you know, starving, dirty child on the side of the road with a sign saying help. The sign said Christian missionary fundraiser.
Right.
We got away with it often because when you say yay God, a lot of people say amen and they look the other way, especially when you're doing something kind of kooky or like not necessarily appropriate, like why are a bunch of little white girls in third world countries? Christian missionaries. All right, bye, kooky. What I want society to understand, though, and this, you know, well, let me say this first. Like, here's my opinion. We have a free country. If you're a grown-ass adult and you want to go do kooky stuff in the forest, like, okay, free country. Here's the line in the cement we need to have. You can't bring children into it.
Right.
See how easy that is? Like, if you want to do stuff with your life as an adult, that is your choice, thoughts, and prayers. Children, though, should not be left without protection, especially in these highly controlled environments where they're not allowed access to the outside world. It's much more difficult to deprogram yourself when you don't have any lifeline, much less support system.
But that falls in between separation of church and state. So, you know, and that's what makes it difficult.
Right.
Yeah. Until the church needs the state, and then all of a sudden the state falls in. But, you know, they have that separation.
It's a slippery slope because I feel like I'm pretty realistic about this problem. The complex thing is that we can't trust our federal government to solve this problem, right? So like I was saying earlier about the federal government, if only, but I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying we're not pretending. Over here, on the one hand, like, yes, I think there should be more oversight for these religious organizations and specifically cults, but there's a lot of gray zone between a church, a cult, and a religious organization, right? So what I don't actually want is more involvement from the federal government in anything. I don't think they'd be helpful. I also think they'd all of a sudden start telling people what to do and how they live their lives, and now they're the cult leader. So that's not helpful, right? again, we have like not understanding these problems doesn't mean there's always a solution to every layer of every problem, but it helps us understand what's not helpful, what would actually be helpful, and possibly even identify like the low-hanging fruit things that we should start solving yesterday, right? And then the bigger things we can be working towards. So that's why I believe, again, that's why I'm working with tech giants to solve problems in the digital realm, creating proprietary technology. This stuff is super nerdy, but super exciting if you want me to go over it. But the short version is the most unlikely heroes, and I'm not talking, the big tech platforms have stepped up to solve problems in a way that like nobody else has. Certain ones, actually just one. But anyway, they've made that technology free to law enforcement. So that's been a whole thing with helping to streamline things and make it more accurate and, speed things up, etc. Anyway, in the digital world, there's a lot going on there. It's very unregulated. There's a lot of solutions we, the people, can and should implement. There's also a lot of really stupid problems that shouldn't exist. You want me to name one? CSAM, child sex abuse material. Let me just unpack this soapbox as quickly as I can because, all right, a lot of politicians, a lot of groups that call themselves anti-trafficking, and when they say like protect children and stuff, they really are just have a religious bias that makes them anti-porn. And look, I'm not pro that. Not my thing. Personally, don't care. Again, if you're a grown-ass adult, do grown-ass adult things. Does not bother me, right? Don't hurt humans or animals. Like that's anyway, my whole thing is like, if you're anti-porn, first of all, use the right words, please. Also, if you're not focused on child sex abuse material, CSAM, I don't use the word child pornography because for a lot of reasons, CSAM, it's already illegal. Nobody's going to sit around debating the merit of whether or not it's morally, objectively harmful, already illegal. Rhetorical question, why wouldn't we start there, right? If you're raising tons of money in the name of combating trafficking, but you're just like, porn is bad and I'm very ashamed of my addiction to it. If you're not actually solving problems, like not only can I not take you seriously, but like you're not even barking up the right tree, in my opinion. You're talking about protecting children, but then you're talking about adult entertainment, which is a different conversation from child sex abuse material and exploitation. So if we can focus on what's already illegal and also what technology exists already to not only identify this stuff, but to take it down. Like I'm saving you a 3-hour dialogue here, but this is possible. It exists. I believe it's intentional that it's not implemented. If we were to see politicians making more reasonable assumptions about the problems and solutions, I might be able to take the words a little more seriously, but we see a lot of misguided, I call it performative activism. A lot of people making millions of dollars in the name of solving problems when they're just exploiting the problem.
Right. I get that. What can normal people do to help, and how can we be better at actually identifying situations where we might be able to be helpful in?
It's a good question. Again, we need to sort of narrow that down. One of the things I'm doing is industry specific training. So let's take law enforcement, but I also, programs for medical professionals, for teachers and educators, for parents, etc., families, for things like truckers, for Department of Transportation, etc. Like there's industry specific information I can give. If I'm staying broad, then I'm going to stay broad in general awareness terms, right? That being said, for example, with law enforcement, let's choose that one. I thought, anyway, I have understood the need for the fundamentals and how desperately just like the 101 is needed, right? And there's a lot more we can go from there, but like first we need to correct the premise. Because if we're saying it's trafficking, but we're actually going after sex workers, like we're doing a disservice to the real victims. We're not allocating resources, like we're causing more chaos and problems. And we're not going, the real victims are not being helped. So there's number one, correcting the premise, meaning take the time to understand the problem. I'm not asking everyone to understand every layer of the problem, but I'm saying in your community or industry, right? Get to know the problem. That's not, that's pretty specific to what you do. Let's take the tech world, for example, or the social media platforms we use, or your church, or your school, or your community, or, I always tell people, go within 5-minute walk of your house and pick 5 kids to protect and promise me it won't be them. Like there's a lot of information, but I'm asking people not to do nothing. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, because it's not, I'm not asking for donations. I'm not asking you to go dedicate your life. I'm saying start in your own community, because most of this starts at home. So like, for God's sakes, please protect your children, right? I'm big on digital safety. Let's not give the internet unlimited, unsupervised access to our children. That'd be great. I do a lot of undercover work, and like, ooh, I could do a whole 3-hour. That's not even trafficking, but like, kids are not okay with the things I see when I'm pretending to be a child on the internet. That's a whole thing. Kids cannot unsee that, right? Once their innocence is taken, like, I need people to take that much more seriously. So there's a lot we can do on prevention. There's a lot we can do to help our communities understand the problem. So things like, is law enforcement getting trained in this? Are they actually going after bad guys in our community? Have they not in a while? We should make sure they know that's important to us, and maybe put some pressure on them to make sure they know that that's what we are going to vote for or against. And if there's a DA or a politician or sheriff, whoever's in the way, like, they also need to know that we, the people, are not going to go for that, right? So I've been pretty effective at a #MakeThemFamous strategy, especially when people who are in the way are going for re-election. And I want to make sure it's important that the public knows if they're going to prosecute traffickers or not. And I, make them say it on video. And there's things that we can all do, because, like, look, you notice, like, I can't not be sarcastic. Like, I do a lot of smiling and waving. I'm not going to lie. You know what I mean? Can't really take it seriously, because, like, it's a really ridiculous problem that we shouldn't have, right? But on a real note, like, there is so much that all of us can do to be part of the solution. For the avoidance of doubt, like, I don't make money doing any of this. I'm not law enforcement. I don't have any, like, I survived a lot of sad things. Like, that's my qualification. You know what I mean? I'm relentless about this. I take no bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't not do this. But the point is that I don't have any special reason to be here other than being intolerant of this evil. So I'm hoping to be able to ignite more people, that if I'm out here doing it, right, there's no excuse not to, but there's also a lot of measurable results we can get if we were to tailor our strategy to actually be effective.
Sure. And in terms of getting we're going to say politician buy-in, right? How difficult, because you're actually working with politicians, how difficult is it to actually get contact with a politician and even talk to them about this type of a thing?
Yeah, so I'm not working with politicians. I'm a bully when they're in the way. And I say that as a petite, smiley female that's not any type of law enforcement, etc., so I can say whatever I need to say. Totally serious. Anyway, Harris County as one of many examples, like, absolutely personal to me. Anyway, I just don't take no for an answer. That's the short version. All of us can do that. Are they easy to get a hold of? Are they eager to help? They make pretty words, but no, they're not helpful. That's real direct. No, absolutely not. What do they care about, though? Do you see how much I have to smile and wave? Like, how do you understand my sarcasm now? Like, how creative I have to be to convince people to protect children, right? So, like, Christians are a whole other thing, because a lot of them will try to, like, debate and, deny, not acknowledge, etc. Politicians, they'll, like, say pretty things to your face and, refer you to their staffer's business card and disappear and not hear from you again. But, when people are unwilling to protect the innocent, we can be pretty sure that they're cowards. And I'm not saying that to be tough. I'm saying that to unpack yet another characteristic of predators. Because a lot of people are held back by fear. And I guess I've just overcome too much to let fear be an excuse, but quite specifically, like, I know the mindset of a predator. I also know the mindset of a weak, pathetic coward who would take money to look the other way while children are being harmed. I'm here to hold all of them accountable. So while I work with law enforcement, I've also been a national whistleblower that has gone above local to state law enforcement to help them in their investigations to take down corrupt law enforcement. With pride. And I make sure that the law enforcement that I work with, right, like, please understand there's a lot that goes into these creative strategies to solve problems. And here we are smiling and waving through it, right? Like, look, I'm wired for this mission. I do actually, like, I enjoy it. I don't know, like, it lights me up. It's there's amazing things happening on a daily basis. There's also a lot of bullshit. But, like, I'm just incredibly unbothered by people who can't be bothered to protect children, or people who want to debate the merit of it, or, like, tell me to forgive and not judge, and all these interesting things. The irony, again, with my dark humor, like, I was born and raised in a Christian cult. We used to have to memorize entire chapters of the Bible. You can pick a language and I can sing the Bible to you.
Oh.
So when Christians are like, you just need to read your Bible, they're like, you have to accept the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm like, well, the irony is I've never met a Christian that knows the Bible better than me. And like, again, it's not a flex. It's just that I've had to like refer to scripture to convince many Christians that it is important to protect children, or that when Jesus said it would be better to put a millstone around their neck and be drowned in the bottom of the sea, that he was actually talking about children, not his church, his little ones, the church, right? The millstone is a very intense.
We're not going to use that verse. We're not going to use that verse.
Sorry, Dave. I had to mute you. Dave, I don't know. Dave, your audio keeps messing up.
Hold on.
To Dave and anyone else who, believe me, like my friends and family can't believe that I'm like, anyway, dealing with all of this because like, how could you? That must be so triggering. And I'm like honestly, it's anyway, my dark humor finds it kind of funny, but it's also, let's call it ironic, right? That here I am like having to debate Christians on the Bible, using the Bible to prove my points, while they make all kinds of interesting excuses as to why we should, forgive people that hurt children, when Jesus's recommendation was the millstone, which I find quite intense and quite permanent, right? So obviously nobody's actually going to go putting millstones on people's neck, like most things in the Bible. It's not actually how that works, but I do find that threat pretty significant because again, it's quite intense and it's very permanent. And it was the one time in the Bible Jesus didn't talk about forgiveness and peace and love. I actually tell that this is actually what I say to Christians that are trying to debate this. I'm like, there are 2 times in the Bible that Jesus was pretty gangster. It was the one time he went to church as an adult, and I let there be an awkward silence, and he flipped tables and kicked ass. And then it was the time that he talked about protecting children. It'd be better to put a millstone around your neck and be drowned in the bottom of the sea than to offend a child. Like, I think that's some gangster shit. That's some cartel ass threats. Like, bro, he, you know what I mean? He was like, don't let me catch you offending a child. That was the one time he did not talk about forgiveness or peace and love. And he was like, and that verse, you can tell I've really had to dig into this Bible here. Anyway, it's like 15 years since, here we are. That verse is repeated in the New Testament 3 times. So the irony here, right? Beyond all the other verses that I'm sure you know about, like the merit of children and their innocence and why we should protect them, beyond the logic we should all have and not even need scripture to back us up to protect children. But here we go. The Bible's very clear. Jesus himself was very clear about protecting children and permanent consequences for those who offend them, not like violate or defile, offend them. Okay. You know what the Bible's not clear about?
I mean, there's a few things.
Going to church on Sunday, accepting the Lord Jesus Christ. That's a whole other thing. The word Lord was not originally in the original text. That's a whole other thing. Anyway, there's all these things that most Christians obsess over that are very much not instructed in the Bible. For example, it says, howbeit the Most High dwelleth not in temples made with hands, right? Anyway, the point is, I find it interesting that, we really have to be so creative in trying to compel people to not only do their part, but to be part of the solution in their own community. It really shouldn't be that complicated. So I appreciate you hosting this message. There's a lot more to it, but I'm here to make it very uncomfortable for people to continue doing nothing, especially the people that are aware of harm happening in their communities. I'm here to make it impossible for them to get away with it.
So that's a good point, because I think awareness is difficult. So like, you have to be able to identify it before you can address it. Are there warning signs? Like, are there indicators that it's going on?
So again, it depends on the situation. Like, I'm not trying to be long-winded. It's not a one-size-fits-all problem. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I'd have to narrow it down to, let's say, industries or situations or experiences. In my TikToks and the actual training I do, like the TikTok is just kind of me running my mouth. But I do a lot of like awareness specific to, for example, for, airports and airline staff, etc., for medical professionals, for teachers, for truckers. So I talk about red flags and what to do, but it's in a general outline format, meaning I can't give you the exact script, right? The oversimplified, let me expand on that real quick, because it's going to be a different, best practice if you're talking about like you're out, you know, at night at a gas station versus like your neighbor who's you think they're trafficking their kid, or you know what I mean? There's different things to look for. There's different pattern analysis of behavioral stuff. So it's hard to narrow that out in a nutshell, but that's why I do training. But here's one of the things, like something more helpful and very general that can be generally applied. I give this analogy, like if you're out in a public space, let's say that I'm at an airport, okay? Petite smiley female, I'm not asking anyone to kick down doors and get bad guys. It's not that heroic, okay? Let's say you're in some public place. Generally, it's not going to be as obvious as you and I would like it to be. That's number one. Not going to be a kid who looks hungry and dirty on the side of the road, okay? So let's say you're at an airport and you see a couple adults with a few kids and they don't look like they belong. They look like, we can get real into pattern analysis, but I'm going to keep it pretty summarized. Like we can look at body language and energy and nervousness and sweating and all these different indicators of what's going on, that they're nervous or that something is off. We can look at the body language of the kids. So my point is, like, there's an initial pattern analysis that we can do, but here's what I, as a petite smiley female, who would not be armed in this case because I just passed security, right? This is what I recommend people, what I would do if I were me, if I were there. So if you're not sure, right? Because you see something that's off, but I can't just call the cops and be like, there's something that looks weird. Okay, bye. That's not actionable as far as a report.
Right.
What I recommend people do. Sorry, it's my dog. Do you hear that?
Yeah, it's okay. We love dogs.
Cool. What I recommend do is literally play dumb and ask questions. So let's say I see something that looks off. I'm not quite sure. There's, I've recognized some things, but it just looks off. There's going to be a gut instinct. Number one, I want people to listen to it. Number two, the play dumb and ask questions mean I'm going to play dumb and be a chatty Cathy, and I'm going to approach in a non-threatening way, and I'm going to ask totally normal questions, like I'm going to pretend to be lost, or I'm looking for a pizza place, or I don't know where, terminal, whatever. Okay. You're getting closer and you're collecting data. So as I get closer to them, now I have better descriptors of their eye colors and what they sound like and what their luggage. What does it look like? Are they, international or domestic terminals? Are they warm clothes or cold clothes, etc. I have much more information, but I'm also monitoring their response to my questions, right? So if I'm in a non-threatening way approaching them and asking totally normal questions, right? If I'm like, hey guys, I'm so sorry, I'm so tired and I don't know anything about this airport. Do you know where this terminal is, right? And if they're just like, I'm sorry, we don't know. Like if they're just normal, right? Okay, maybe not a red flag. Or the opposite, if they're like, if they get more nervous, they don't want to engage in a normal human way for the situation, right? If they don't want you to talk to the kids, if they kind of brush the kids, get between you and the kids, like there's body language indicators. Think of it like a flow chart, right? If this, then that, like, okay, something else. Okay, more questions. I'm going to act more just lost and clueless. I'm going to like, blah, 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 blah. And I see them getting more and more stressed and trying to leave and try to distance and try, right? One thing that I tell people, because again, I can't give you a script. It really depends on what's happening and using your best judgment, right? But one thing I ask people is if you can work into your happy chatty conversation, something about to the kids, again, assuming they're like of an age where they can talk and respond, right? Something about like, oh my God, you guys are going on a trip. Oh, that's so fun. I'm going to see my sister. I'm so excited. Are you guys going somewhere fun? Are you guys excited? Something about, are you excited? And I'll unpack why. Normally kids in these very controlled environments are heavily scripted. Right. Heavily scripted, right? We're going with our aunt. So again, when you're asking the kid normal question, and if they're responding in a very robotic scripted way, like a very, again, fear in their eyes and all these other indicators, that's not normal. That doesn't mean we know what's going on, but we're like, ooh, something's off. That's where flowchart, like keep asking questions, etc. Keep collecting data. So let's say they're like, are you guys excited, right? Often a kid generally won't have a script for that. So you might see them kind of blank face, like look at the adult, like I don't, like just an
looking
awkward
for direction.
Response. They don't know how to handle that.
What do I say? Yeah.
It's very difficult for a kid to fake excitement, because even if they're like, yes, we're very excited, you know what I mean? Like even if they respond, we're not fixating on the words as much as the energy or the read of the situation. Now, again, I'm trying to keep it summarized. There's a lot here. A child often doesn't know they're being abused. So we're not asking questions assuming the child's going to be like, help me, I'm being trafficked. Like that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Okay. We're not looking for the perfect word or like a hand signal, like stop. No. We are understanding the problem so that we can use our best judgment and ensure our solutions are actually effective. Now let's pretend you've assessed the situation, you've talked with them as long as you can. Now they're just like leaving, like okay, you're done. You have a lot of data. Now at the very least, you can report it to all the authorities and have thorough descriptions and a lot more accurate information, a lot more stuff to go off of, right? Versus just there's something weird with a guy with a girl and I don't know, okay, bye, like nothing's gonna happen with that report, right? Another thing, again, I'm trying to keep it summarized, but like often there's a need to follow up on these situations because very often these situations are improperly handled, if at all. So, if this is something you may never come across again, it makes it more difficult than if it's in your actual community, like your church, school, neighborhood, etc. That's something you can, I recommend, check on and follow up on and make sure, right? Now, in the meantime, again, maybe it's familial trafficking and that kid is not in a good place. Chill. Can you help the kid in the meantime? You know what I mean? Like, what can you do to help? Anyway, lots of stories I could tell, lots more examples of this, but like, it's probably easier than people think. It's probably less heroic and movie-like than people think. It's a lot more practical, and you know what I mean? But I'm asking people to start at home for those reasons.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Where are the where are children most likely to be in danger? I know it's a broad question.
Yeah. Okay, one of the most difficult things is that there's either not data like correctly taken, it's very underreported, like we really don't have accurate references. So I could probably name like some categories of where, like the highest reported trafficking cases, right? But again, I mean, it's sad, but there's the similar statistic. Most women are unalived in their home by their husband, right? That's the main like threat to women's safety. For children, I can't prove this statistic, but I think the home might also apply, not to say every home is unsafe, but to say a lot of children are being exploited in their homes, right? Sometimes in private, a lot of times there's like things that the neighbors know about that everyone's just minding their own business and too afraid to intervene. So, we could name things like there's the border, there's transportation routes, right? But like let me put it this way, to make it the most practical for civilians, right? We're not military operators, etc. So what we are most likely to encounter, I want people to focus on their own community for a lot of reasons, because I don't think you have to look very far. I think you know the most about your own community, so you know the patterns and the baseline and what should, you know a lot about it and the people and who's running what, etc. You can follow up on stuff, etc. It just makes it more practical and it makes us all much more responsible for our communities. I have this crazy idea that we the people, not our federal government, we the people could create a culture where our communities are intolerant to people who hurt children. That's unfortunately baseline, isn't it?
I mean,
I would
that
like
should
to
be
see
the
that in our
case.
generation, though. Sorry?
So that should be the case. I'm afraid it's not.
Yeah. So, within various realms of our society, we have different types of problem, but I just want to help people understand, like, there's not one way it happens, one way it looks, one type of predator or industry or top five, or, there's different patterns in different communities. There are different, more general, like broader patterns we could lay out, and I do a lot about like unpacking the characteristics of predators, both mentally as well as just kind of the overall framework that supports them. And again, awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate. You didn't ask this question, but I referenced the 10 rules of every cult. And this is something I wrote. It's not very long at all. It's an interesting pattern recognition list that, don't ask why, it was late at night. And I wrote this down like all at once, late one night, because that's how my brain is. Anyway, I've run it by a lot of experts and I haven't had anyone add anything to it because it's a pretty good list. All right, so this is the 10 rules of every cult. I want people to also think about how this applies to other patterns in our society today. Number 1 rule, they must not know. Cults have layers. There's always an outer public layer, like a corporate brochure version. if we're happy, smiling people and we love Jesus and everything's fine, we're totally not a cult. There's always the public version, and then there's what's actually happening on the inside that maybe only the leadership truly knows about, but you earn your place there. Number 2 rule, it is written, take it by faith. Number 3, we are the only ones who are right. Number 4, we make our own rules. Whatever is done in love is love. You know what I mean? Number 5, this is what's best. This is God's highest will. This is the best way I could raise you. We're so privileged to be his chosen, whatever. Number 6 is recruit, full stop. Number 7, you must earn your place. Participation is not optional. Again, my parents were leadership, my mother, whatever. The point is, like, I was raised around this like cult within a cult where the rules didn't apply to them and they had all the stuff they got away with, but they're still playing the pawns for the donation, you know, the whole pyramid scheme thing. Like, that applies to a lot of realms in society today. Number 8 is support by whatever means necessary. For most of them, financial contributions are the priority, and those who give the most money have the most freedom or power within the cult. Rules don't apply. Number 9, dedication. Do whatever it takes, even forsaking friends and family, making incredible sacrifices, and enduring endless pain and discomfort. Number 10, if you're not for us, you're against us. That is a pattern that applies to many realms of society. And again, to reverse engineer these problems, we have to understand the problems and how they affect people, especially if we're trying to help rescue people from them or help them heal from it, or prevent this from happening, or identify predators in our communities, or make our communities intolerant to the infrastructures that support these predators.
Sure. And what can we do to help support your work?
I really appreciate that question. I do have a nonprofit. It's digitaldefendersunited.org. It's a 501c3. I don't use it for fundraising. Like, I fund everything myself right now. It's actually really exciting. There's some things I'll talk about in a few months once they're more solidified, but we're working on, I do a lot of law enforcement training to help people identify and combat this issue, set up sting operations, investigations, take down bad guys like soup to nuts, actually take action and actually help children. Then, the rescue ops, etc., vetting the safe houses. So if you have contacts in any, realm of government, or if you want to make sure you're mayor, like, let's hold people accountable. Let's connect with the right people that are actually solutions oriented. You can reach me on my website, digitaldefendersunited.org. The other aspect of that, though, is that I'm working with some really badass people to roll out some really powerful training that we want to make sure that it stays free, especially for law enforcement, but like that is actually helpful and constantly updated. It's also got a reporting aspect of it, etc. So I'm working on some bigger picture things. So, again, like, nobody takes a salary. This isn't about, this is about solving problems, but it's also about uniting the experts that actually are here to solve problems and know what they're talking about. And there's a lot of groundwork happening for some big change. I'm personally focused on the tech world for digital solutions as well as preventions and etc. The law enforcement training realm, because that's just so needed. And then, that's not my website. It's digitaldefendersunited.org.
Oh, United. Oh, you get the right one.
Yes. And then also, anyway, education for different realms of society. Like I was talking about, medical experts and, hotel staff and ER nurses. Like, there's all these different sectors of society that really need specialized training. So again, I think knowledge is power, but only when we're willing to do something with it. So it's not just about like awareness, it's about understanding this problem and creating and implementing effective solutions.
That's excellent. So you guys do have a nonprofit set up. Is it going to be linked to your website?
That is my website. That's my nonprofit, Digital Defenders United. I'm the founder. You can check out my board of advisors and, the different stuff we do. It's pretty, it's public facing. It's, there's actually a lot of education on there about digital safety, and there's a whole like checklist of internet safety tools and stuff. So it's an informative website, but like, of course, we can't always talk about the real work that we really do. I work at, I can't say the whole logo, but it's at the Ranch, Texas. It's a law enforcement and government training facility in South Texas. We do a lot of different training programs and all the things. We have some programs for civilians, but the point is it's a very cool environment. We are 1 hour north of the border, 1 hour south of San Antonio. So needless to say, there's a lot of activity and a lot of work to do. So yeah, if people want to know more, like just let me know how they can help or how they want to help. And I really encourage people though to start in your community. Like if everyone watching this picked 5 children that they promised to protect and promised me it wouldn't be them, we could change some statistics.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I want to encourage
So
everyone
I
to
want to
check out
encourage everyone to check out
Digital Defenders
Digital
United,
Defenders
and it sounds
United,
like the
and
Ranch,
it sounds like the
Texas. I don't know
Ranch,
anything about
Texas.
the
I don't
ranch
know
yet.
anything about the ranch yet.
The ranch is a really cool place. The owner's a very good friend of mine, really good people here. And from day one, they've always been like, how can we help the mission? That website is ranchtx.org. The ranch. So anyway, this place has a lot of history. For those talking about, it used to be ITI, Blackwater, etc. So this place has a very rich history, and the location of it being an hour north of the Laredo border is quite an interesting zone, if you will.
Okay, let me see if I can get their website up. They do have
I'll
a
put it in.
website.
Yeah, ranchtx.org. And
Yes,
then DD.
that's it.
See, I'm commenting with my nonprofit, if it lets me.
I can, if you send me a link, I'll make sure to link your nonprofit in the description of the video as well, so people can get access to it.
Cool. I love that. I appreciate it. Yeah, we do a lot of different types of, tactics training, medical, first responders, law enforcement, all the things, a lot of different military branches, government agencies, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite an interesting mix of individuals, to say the least. And, definitely a lot of interesting fireside chats that have resulted in some really cool collaborations. And just like, look, 100% of the type of protectors who train here are the type that would protect children for fun and for free. This is kind of a side note, but like servicemen, I've never served, etc. Huge respect. Service members have always been my people, both because like we can share the dark humor and laugh, but also because like we're very action oriented. You can call it a trauma response. That's fine. I think there's a lot of redemption though. A big part of PTSD and CPTSD and things like that is the shame that people shouldn't have to carry for what you did or didn't do in the past, for the things we can't forgive and forget, right? So when those service members are able to utilize their training and skills to actually help people protect children in our country, right? It's an honor, but it can also be a very healing like process of redemption. For me personally, I call it retribution, and I wish this retribution on every survivor.
Yeah. Well, Kim, thank you so much for spending time with me. I've got a couple chats from the audience. So I'm going to put a couple up, and if you have questions for Kim that we didn't get to, you're welcome to throw them into the supers. Side says, "What great information! Thanks for all you do." That's for you, Kim, not for me. They already know what I do. Thank you very much. And Jerk says, "Thank you for doing this. Thank you to Kim and other guests before. It's difficult to listen to at times. I'm sure it's hard for the guests to talk about it. It's very important to have these conversations." And I could be wrong, but I think that's one of the reasons why so many people don't know, is because they kind of are difficult conversations. Have you found that there are survivors that struggle to talk about what they went through?
Oh, for sure. I would say most. Like, it's actually pretty rare that someone wants to, and I, myself included. Like, I really didn't want to. It took me a couple years of trying to get everyone else to. Anyway, this is on a personal note. Like, it was actually extremely triggering to be on camera, and I had to overcome that because I tried to get everyone else, and it wasn't happening. Chapo settle. That being said, yeah, I would say most don't want to speak out. There's also a lot of survivors that are silenced and threatened and all this kind of, weaponized manipulation against them. I've definitely experienced that. Fun fact, from churches and the religious nonprofits, especially the Christian ones that call themselves anti-trafficking but are really just exploiting the problem. Yeah, I've exposed a lot of corrupt organizations and cults. And anyway, I just have this, pretty fearless about it. I guess I've just overcome a lot of evil that I'm not scared of it, right? But everyone's in a different place in their healing journey. It's not a one size fits all, healing method or best practice or whatever. It's really about the individualized experience. And I have this theory, right? It's a pretty harsh one, but I'm allowed to say it. I believe healing is a choice, never makes it easy. That means it's our personal choice. That means it's our power. And that means we don't have to wait for the people who broke us to fix us or to apologize or say the perfect words. It also means we're the only one who can decide to heal and the extent to which we allow ourselves to heal. Now, that's a journey. Unfortunately, there's not necessarily a finish line, and it's definitely not a linear, woo, we're done process, right? It can be all kinds of things, but it doesn't have to mean suffering. It can actually mean finding peace and happiness and joy. For some people, that can mean spending time in nature and just finding yourself. For many people, it can mean, just focusing on your kids and work and living a good life and being a good person. For me and for many, it means fighting back. In addition to this joy and this peace that no one can take away from me, right? In addition to this life I live, that's like these incredible experiences every single day. I think for some people, especially those of us who are pissed off, I think we're meant to fight. But it does
Yeah.
take healing to be able to be in that place, right? Because if you don't do the work to heal first, it's not only about pouring from an empty cup, it's that you're not going to be able to really give to others. It's going to be very triggering and traumatizing for you. So, there's a lot of work in healing, and again, there's no finish line, but it can be a beautiful process.
Yeah, I would imagine it's a difficult process, and I'll end with my friend Goodwin, which I couldn't agree with more. To everyone involved in this, thank you for doing this. Thank you for your testimony and bravery. You do humanity's work. You're doing something I couldn't dream of doing, and a lot of us that probably at one point hoped that we would find somebody engaging in this work that we could support, said you're that person. So I'll make sure that your information is available in the description as a comment. People can support your nonprofit and your work and even the ranch as well. And Kim, I thank you so much for coming and joining me today. And I'm sure we'll be able to cross paths again as we know all the same people.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people referred me to you. I was already following you, and I was like, oh yeah, I know who this is. Yeah, I appreciate what you do as well. I definitely appreciate people that are intent about dialogue. I've seen a lot of your lives, and like, it's not about arguing. It's not about being right. It's actually about uniting people over the premise of logic and truth. Right? Truth is objective. So like me personally, I don't care what people believe or think or whatever. It's how you pray, that's fine. But it is about like, what are we doing? So again, knowledge is only power if we choose to do something with it. So thank you for using your knowledge and for helping people and for giving people a path towards critical thinking. I think that's so critical, especially in this day and age.
Well, thank you, Kim. And hope you have a great night, and we'll be in contact soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.